George Best was a Northern Irish footballer widely regarded as one of the greatest talents to ever play the game. Born on May 22, 1946, in Belfast, Northern Ireland, Best showed early signs of prodigious talent. He came from a working-class family, with his father, Dickie Best, a passionate supporter of football, and his mother, Anne, who was deeply supportive of his athletic pursuits. His early life in Belfast was shaped by the difficult backdrop of the city's social and political tensions, yet football provided him an escape and a pathway to greatness. Best's footballing career began with Manchester United, where he joined their youth team at 15. His first appearance for the senior team came when he was just 17 years old, and his natural talent quickly stood out. He was an incredibly skillful, creative winger, known for his quick feet, dribbling, vision, and remarkable ability to score goals. Best became one of the most dazzling players in the world, earning the nickname El Beetle for his good looks and appeal reminiscent of a rock star. He had a charm that transcended the pitch, drawing a large fan base not just for his footballing brilliance, but for his charismatic personality. Best's most memorable years came during his time with Manchester United in the 1960s and early 1970s. In 1968, at the age of 22, he helped lead Manchester United to the European Cup victory, becoming the first English club to win the prestigious tournament. His performance in the final against Benfica, where he scored a spectacular goal, cemented his legacy as one of the game's greats. This victory, combined with his numerous dazzling individual performances, earned him the prestigious Ballon d'Or in 1968, recognizing him as the best footballer in Europe. Despite his undeniable talent, Best's career was marred by personal issues. He struggled with alcoholism, a problem that would define much of his life off the pitch. His excesses and lifestyle choices caused tensions within Manchester United and ultimately led to his departure from the club in 1974. His time after leaving United was turbulent, marked by brief stints at other clubs like the Los Angeles Aztecs, the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, and the San Jose Earthquakes. While he continued to show flashes of brilliance, the magic he had once displayed in his prime was fading. Best's relationship with football was complicated by his struggle with personal demons, particularly alcohol, which led to a series of controversies. Though he was still capable of producing moments of brilliance on the field, his career never reached the heights it could have. His time in the United States, especially with the Aztecs, showed glimpses of his old genius, but his personal problems overshadowed his playing days. Best eventually returned to Northern Ireland and played in smaller leagues, but his footballing prowess had diminished by this point. On the international stage, Best's time with Northern Ireland was less fruitful than his club career. He earned 37 caps for his country, scoring 9 goals. Despite his brilliance, Northern Ireland was often not competitive enough on the international stage, and they never qualified for a major international tournament during his playing days. However, his performances for his country were always well regarded, and he remained a symbol of national pride for Northern Irish fans. Throughout the years following his retirement, George Best remained a controversial figure. His lifestyle choices, particularly his battles with alcohol, led to a tragic decline in his health. In 2005, Best was diagnosed with liver failure, a result of his long history of heavy drinking. He underwent a liver transplant, but his health continued to deteriorate. On November 25, 2005, at the age of 59, George Best passed away in a London hospital, leaving behind a legacy as one of the most gifted footballers to ever play the game. George Best's story is one of immense talent, fame, and tragedy. He was a footballer whose on-field genius captivated the world, but whose personal struggles led to an untimely and difficult end. His name remains synonymous with skill, flair, and brilliance, and his influence on the game and culture is still felt to this day. After his passing, George Best's legacy continued to resonate both within the world of football and beyond. His extraordinary ability on the field, his charisma, and his lifestyle made him a larger-than-life figure in the history of the sport. In the years following his death, tributes poured in from all corners of the football world. Players, managers, and fans alike spoke of his talent, often referring to him as the greatest player never to have won the World Cup. In Northern Ireland, George Best remains a beloved figure. His connection to the country, both through his heritage and his international career, has made him an icon. In his hometown of Belfast, statues and memorials were erected in his honor, celebrating his role as a national treasure. The George Best Belfast City Airport is one of the most prominent tributes to him, named in his honor in 2006, a year after his death. Best's legacy was also carried forward through his family. His son, Callum Best, became a well-known television personality and model, often speaking of his father's influence and the complex relationship they had due to George's personal struggles. Callum, along with others close to George, worked to ensure that his father's legacy was remembered not only for the pitfalls, but for the immense contribution he made to the game of football. In the footballing world, Best is still frequently cited as one of the best players to ever grace the pitch. While his career may have been short-lived compared to some other greats, his influence on the game is undeniable. He played with a natural flair and artistry that is rarely seen in the modern game. His style was all about improvisation and individual brilliance, paving the way for later generations of players who sought to play with similar freedom. Many football fans and analysts still rank him among the greatest players of all time, often citing his Ballon d'Or win as a mark of his extraordinary talent. George Best's story also had a significant impact on how the public viewed the relationship between fame and personal struggles. His battles with addiction and the subsequent toll it took on his life and career brought attention to the darker side of the sport and the pressures athletes face. In a way, Best became a cautionary tale, illustrating the fragile balance between stardom and personal well-being. In popular culture, Best's image as a rock star of football persists. He was a part of the golden era of the sport, where players like him became not just sports figures but cultural icons. His love for the limelight, his relationship with the media, and his high-profile lifestyle made him a fixture in tabloid headlines, ensuring that he remained relevant long after his playing days were over. Many documentaries, biographies, and films have been made about his life, exploring both his brilliance on the field and his tragic fall from grace off it. Football clubs, especially Manchester United, continue to honor George Best. The club maintains his legacy through various commemorations, including his inclusion in their Legends team, and references to his influence are often seen in their Old Trafford Stadium. United fans regularly chant his name during matches, and his number 7 jersey, which he wore during his time at the club, remains one of the most iconic numbers in football history.
Though George Best's life was marked by contradictions, the genius on the field and the turbulence off it, his impact on football is undeniable. He was a true pioneer in how footballers became global stars, living in the limelight with an air of rebellion and brilliance. His name will forever be remembered in the pantheon of football legends, and his story continues to inspire both admiration and reflection on the price of fame and talent. George Best's enduring legacy also manifests in the ongoing debates about what might have been had he been able to maintain a more stable lifestyle. The consensus among many football experts, former teammates, and fans is that Best could have achieved even more had he not struggled with personal demons. While his undeniable talent already places him among the greatest, his career was sadly truncated by his battles with alcoholism and personal turmoil. This idea of untapped potential and unfulfilled promise contributes to the tragic nature of his story, adding depth to his status as a football legend. The contrast between his brilliance and the chaos that surrounded his life only amplified his mystique. His peak years in the late 1960s and early 1970s were a time of transformation in both football and the broader cultural landscape. The world was transitioning through a cultural revolution, and Best embodied this spirit, rebellious, charismatic, and constantly in the public eye. He mirrored the freedom and experimentation that defined the times, becoming an icon for a generation. His personality and footballing artistry made him as much a cultural figure as a sportsman. The admiration for George Best transcended borders. Though his international career with Northern Ireland was relatively limited in terms of success, his influence was felt far beyond the United Kingdom. His international appeal, particularly in the United States during his time in the NASL, North American Soccer League, helped to raise the profile of football in America at a time when the sport was not yet as popular as it is today. Best's presence in the U.S. was part of a broader effort to popularize soccer in the country, and he was part of a wave of footballing stars from Europe who helped introduce the game to American audiences. Even though his time in the U.S. was less productive in terms of trophies and accolades, it offered him the opportunity to continue playing the game he loved on his own terms. His time in the NASL was a reflection of the decline in his personal life, a final attempt at sustaining his professional identity amidst the challenges he faced. While these years didn't match the success of his time at Manchester United, they helped maintain his public profile and allowed him to continue to inspire fans worldwide. In the years after his death, numerous documentaries, books, and films have been created to share his story. These works have explored different facets of his life, from his extraordinary playing ability to the personal struggles that led to his premature demise. Biographies such as George Best, The Beautiful Game, and documentaries like George Best, all by himself, have provided deeper insights into his complexities, including interviews with those closest to him, and have revisited the major milestones of his life, both triumphs and downfalls. Despite the dark chapters, Best's legacy has come to symbolize more than just a cautionary tale. He represents the extraordinary potential of human talent, the exhilaration of football at its best, and the pitfalls of fame and fortune. His story has become part of football folklore, discussed with admiration and reverence. Future generations of fans continue to discover his highlights, his dazzling runs, his audacious goals, and his cheeky charm, cementing his place as one of the most iconic players in the history of the sport. Manchester United continues to keep George Best's memory alive by honoring him as one of their greatest ever players. The club regularly includes him in discussions surrounding their greatest teams, and his name is frequently mentioned alongside other legends of the game, like Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law, and Ryan Giggs. His influence on the club, and his part in its rise to prominence during the 1960s and early 70s, is still celebrated. In fact, his number 7 shirt, which he wore with such distinction, remains iconic and is frequently worn by top-level players at the club who are seen as inheritors of Best's magic, such as Eric Cantona, David Beckham, and Cristiano Ronaldo. Best's influence was also acknowledged by those who watched him play live, some of whom are still sharing their memories of him today. His unforgettable performances, particularly his majestic dribbling and composure in front of goal, remain etched in the minds of many who had the privilege to witness him in his prime. His fearless approach to football, his lack of regard for conventionality, and his creative expression on the field were unmatched at the time. In the grand narrative of football history, George Best remains a shining example of raw talent and the potential for greatness. Yet, his life also serves as a reminder of the fragility of success and the importance of taking care of one's mental and physical well-being amidst the pressures of fame. Though his footballing career was far shorter than many would have liked, his legacy continues to inspire. He will forever be remembered as one of the brightest stars to have ever graced a football pitch, a player whose talent burned brightly, though all too briefly.